Good evening, everyone. Yat el inishike dosha dinae. Sheya Tatiana Benali Yanishya, Toto Nasha, Nanis Ejetachini, Nishlin, Nashasha Dinae Bashichin, Kinflichini Dashache, Ado Bitani Dashnale. Akot ego dines sanishle. My name is Tatiana Benali. I'm from Sebita on the Navajo Nation. I am the Zuni clan of Tachini and born for the Tiwa Bear clan. Currently residing in Lenapehoking, although this week I'm calling in from North Carolina. I work with the American Indian Community House, and on behalf of the Community House, thank you so much for joining us. This is our 7th installment of this series, so thank you to everyone that has shown up to multiple series. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome. This series is hosted by the American Indian Community House to provide an intentional online space to collectively explore and discuss resources and information regarding Indigenous issues and conflicts that directly affect us today. Through shared concern and efforts, we will discuss action, solutions, and the many different ways we can contribute toward the movement and change making. Online in solidarity, led by and for Indigenous folks, we will be providing a space that is accessible, respectful, and in unity. This is just a reminder that this is one event of many that the American Indian Community House puts on. We are in a time of social distancing and quarantining, so sometimes it's hard to find those native spaces virtually. But the Community House is doing a really good job of providing that online native presence for us all that we definitely need. So I would recommend checking out the Instagram, the Facebook, or sign up with the newsletter from the Community House's website to keep up to date on upcoming events. And just so everybody knows, there's programming on Wellbriety support, elder storytelling, makers labs, at-home fitness classes, census events, as well as the series. Additionally, we just started Native Theater Thursdays, which has been really dope. I attended the last one and it was super fun and a lot of good energy there. So there's a lot to do if you're looking for something to do. So happy to have you all here. Our last social justice series focused on revisiting the Mashpee Nation for updates. And this Tuesday we'll be gathering to hear from the Cheyenne River Sioux. Last week, Governor Kristi Noem of so-called South Dakota wrote letters to Cheyenne River, Oglala Sioux tribes demanding that the tribe's COVID-19 preventative checkpoints be removed. These checkpoints are on tribal land. This is a threat to tribal sovereignty. So tonight we're going to be sitting down with panelists from the area to talk about tribal sovereignty, this history between the tribe and the state, and actions we can do to support our relatives' right to protect their tribe. And for some brief history on what's gone down so far, on April 2nd, the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe implemented checkpoints on US Highway 212 in efforts to mitigate and respond to the spread of COVID-19. 25 CFR 170.114A, the Oglala Sioux tribe implemented similar checkpoints in mid-March. These safety measures are crucial to the health and wellness of the tribal citizens, especially in light of Governor Noem's questionable handling of the COVID-19 crisis. And to my knowledge, there's similar things happening on the Rosebud Sioux tribe as well. Then on May 8th, Governor Noem sent letters to both tribes that demanded these checkpoints be removed, or she threatened to take legal action against the tribes. She pointed to a Department of Interior memo that states tribes must consult and reach an agreement with the state before closing or restricting travel on state or U.S. highways. However, both leaders cited the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty, which says non-Native Americans can't live on, occupy, or pass through reservations without tribal consent. Regardless of what the DOI memo suggests or the cited regulation, Justice Ruth Ginsburg, writing the Supreme Court in Strait v. A-1 contractors, assured tribes have regulatory authority for conduct that threatens or has some direct effect on the health or welfare of the tribe, even when that conduct occurs on public highways, and even if that conduct is perpetrated by non-natives. While the threat cannot be abstract, COVID-19 and its asymptomatic carriers are no abstract threat. With the lack of resources we have medically, this is our best tool we have right now to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And this is a quote from Chairman Fraser from the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. Fraser said that reservations are ill-equipped to deal with the coronavirus outbreak, adding that the nearest healthcare critical care is 3 hours away from the territory, and that the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe only operates an 8-bed facility on the reservation with no intensive care unit for the 12,000 tribal citizens on the reservation. So that's just a brief history of what's come or what has transpired up to now. I will also be showing a short little video, but I do want to give some time for our panelists, our lovely panelists, to introduce themselves and kind of introduce a little bit of their work and their perspective on all of this that's happening. Obviously, this is something that relatives far and wide need to pay attention to because tribal sovereignty means a lot to all of us, and things that attack it we need to continuously be aware of and have discussions and be in solidarity on. So with that said, could I ask Candy to please introduce yourself and just a brief introduction to who you are and some of the work that you do? Thank you.
Hamadak yapi, layampi tukile, iu hachante washe napi chuziapi. Imachiapi, wakian tuampi iyo yampawi. Imachiapi, chante makilawi. I would like to greet each and every one of you with a handshake from my heart. I know this is an unprecedented time, and it's definitely a time to lean on our spirituality, our faith, and our families. So my name is Candy Brings Plenty, and I am an Oglala Lakota Sioux tribal member. I identify as a queer, indigenous, non-binary two-spirit, and I am here in the Black Hills. I am currently doing a lot of work on the ground to support my communities, both on the Pine Ridge Reservation and in our urban Indian community in Rapid City. I am the Indigenous Justice Organizer for the ACLU South Dakota. And we definitely took a stance yesterday. I spent time passing out donations to our elders, specifically those who had no running water or electricity, to some youth to do some mental health check-ins, because there's a lot of youth, including my two daughters, my two children, teenagers, who attend Littlewood High School and Kyle on the reservation. There is definitely the support in regards to passing out school meals on a daily and the virtual school support, but there's still that mental health component for our youth that I feel like it hasn't been quite addressed in any way. So yesterday, my children had friends who did express that they had mental health concerns and they were feeling unstable. So we got some packages together and delivered them with no contact to let them know that we're in this together and we're going to be here waiting for you on the other side, so that some of the families themselves are still in a huge deficit. I made 200 masks, gave 100 to the tribe to pass out, but I learned that that it's located in the tribal building and only folks who have access to a vehicle or are walking distance can go pick them up. But there's 9 districts, and those hot spots that are in Wounded Knee and Wombly, they have no support and no masks. So we went out and drove and delivered 50 to Wombly and 50 to Wounded Knee, and there's just still so much to do and so much work, and I can't even imagine what it looks like on the Navajo reservation. And my mom and my sister and my niece currently live on the CRST reservation in Cherry Creek and in Takini. So that's where, my mom lives here in Rapid, but we took her to go quarantine. We felt it was best for her to be in a safe space. So I'm here also doing support for Two-Spirit folks, because that's something that we definitely need to also amplify and elevate, that there are youth who are being quarantined with homophobic and transphobic family members. And the only way that we can reach out is definitely virtually, or even just sending them packages. So I just want to express that, as I am very much active in our Two-Spirit community and a national Two-Spirit advocate.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's awesome. So thankful for all of the work that you're doing on your homelands. I would also like, Robin, if you could please introduce yourself.
I'm Petu Washde Yuha, I'm a Dakabi, Kanka Kishto, Alabo, Machape, Kishto, Nahayu, Kshante Washde. It's really great to greet you all with a good heart. My name is, of course, Robin LeBeau. I'm from the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. I currently hold the position of a District 5 chairwoman of the largest district on my reservation. Formerly, I'm a tribal council representative, a police officer, numerous titles, but currently I am a grassroots advocate for humans and air and plants and anything that needs advocating for. Currently in my community, we are in the local community where I'm at is called Chinatown, Wakba Washde, Cheyenne River. We are building a community garden. And because we are on level 3, which means that we had 1 positive case and that we are to be staying in our homes, and we only have 3 things that we are to leave our home for is medical, groceries, or to do outdoor activities, portion of a garden going, and then we are going to be taking the rest that we have grown. I just want to reach out to all the people across, the world, because we actually have many relatives and friends that we've been on the forefront with on many environmental aspects of trying to heal the earth and fight for climate justice. I've made so many relatives and been invited into their communities and actually into their lands that I just want to say my heartfelt prayers are with all of you, from the Amazon to the First Nations to across the ocean, because I know we've all been in this together from the very beginning. And I just, we got to stay rooted to who we are. And I just wanted to say, the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe people we got to remember our creation story. And we're connected all by this. So, we got to remember that, the Lala's behind me, and just remember that our roots and our DNA are rooted to the earth, to Unchi Maka, And so we got to stay in those prayer ways. And I just wanted to say that everybody is in my prayers. There is a lot going on here. I mean, there's a big introductory. I'm not really good at, doing introductories, but like I said, I am here. One Mind Youth Movement, a lot of youth activities I do. We aligned with the Cowboys and Indian Alliance in 2012 for the No KXL. We still got them at our borders. I just want to say that one thing that I would like to say to the people is before COVID got here, and came, we were already fighting things that were on our borders, like man camps. And so a lot of that is still happening, and a lot of traffic is still happening on our highways. And so along with the Border Patrol being here, it's a sense of security, because people forgot that our women and people were being chased off the roads. Just 3 months ago, we were fighting this battle of people being chased off our highways, and people forget that this was a scary time for us, traveling to and from doctor's appointments and having to make cardboard families and call and have family plans, that we were traveling down the highways because it was scary. And now we got people, with guns and stuff threatening, because we have Border Patrol protecting us at health checkpoints just to do trace documenting of where people are going. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that were happening prior to a global pandemic for us just trying to protect our borders. I put up a map back here of our borders of our reservation in our state here. So I just want to remember that before this, we were in some scary times, and that is still happening. So Lila, Wopala Tonka, for this time and space and energy to share with all of you. And I reach out all my heartfelt prayers to all of the nations all across, from the condor to the eagle. I really want to say that I am thinking of all of you in all of my prayers every day and night. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Both of you are doing incredible work, and thank you again for joining us tonight. I wanted to go over the agenda quickly, and also kind of go a little bit deeper into kind of the timeline that we want to stick by, I guess, for the discussion. So from 6 to 6:15, obviously we passed that, introductions, brief overview. 6:15 to 6:45, introductions, brief overview with panelists. And I guess with that, I kind of wanted to follow, like Robin, you kind of touched on that. There's a lot of history before this all happened, and obviously COVID-19 kind of is bringing us closer to having these like discussions that we need to have, but we also need to be mindful that a lot of these issues have transcended this period of time, and so that's something to keep in mind, and something that I wanted to cover during our dialogue, just kind of like the state and tribe relationship, or state and federal relationship leading up to all of this, and then a little bit about tribal sovereignty, a general COVID-19 update, because I feel like that's something that kind of sparked a lot of this news updates, I guess. And I think that's one of the ways that relatives and allies can be of support to our relatives in so-called South Dakota at this time. But that's the kind of things I want to cover during this discussion. And then 6:45 to 7:15, actionable things people can do. 7:15 to 7:45, Q&A, open discussion. And I also wanted to briefly kind of open the Q&A like to before and after that time period. And if anybody has any questions that they wanted to ask throughout this dialogue, feel free to drop it into the Zoom chat or the Facebook live stream chat, and we can cover that as questions come up. And then 7:45 to 8, closing remarks, H announcements, anything lingering that we wanted to touch on. So with that said, I do want to show a short video that Democracy Now! Made, kind of reporting what has happened so far. I feel like this is pretty good documentation. It's 18 minutes, so it's not too long, and then we can kind of sit on questions and how we want to move forward after that. So I'm going to go ahead and get that movie rolling. Oh, Tennis, can you make me a co-host again?
Yes, 1 second.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the Quarantine Report. I am Amy Goodman in New York City, the epicenter of the pandemic, with my co-host Juan Gonzalez joining us from his home in New Jersey. Hi, Juan.
Good morning, Amy, and a good day to all of our viewers and listeners across the country and around the world.
Well, we begin today's show with the standoff in South Dakota, where 2 Native American Indian tribes are defying orders by South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem to remove COVID-19 checkpoints from their territories. The Cheyenne River Sioux and Oglala Sioux tribes say that checkpoints are the best way to protect against the coronavirus entering their communities, which are not equipped to handle an outbreak. The governor says the checkpoints, which are set up on highways on tribal land, are illegal. On Friday, she gave the tribes 48 hours to remove them and threaten legal action. Both the Cheyenne River Sioux and Oglala Sioux have refused, and the checkpoints are still running. In a Facebook Live video Saturday, Oglala Sioux Tribe President Julian Bearrunner and Governor Noem said that Governor Noem was threatening the sovereignty of the Oglala people.
South Dakota's Governor Kristi Noem threatened the sovereign interests of the Oglala people when she issued an ultimatum to us on May 8, 2020. Governor Noem miscalculates our level of dedication to protect our most vulnerable people from crony capitalism thrust to force us to open our economy as they chose to do so. There is no way to place a value on what we have to lose if we let them insult us this way. My relatives, we have been here for millions of years. Whatever they brought to our lands has proven to be poison.
17 South Dakota lawmakers signed a letter over the weekend urging the South Dakota governor to seek a resolution with the tribes. As of Monday, the state had not yet filed any lawsuit. South Dakota has a COVID-19 death toll of at least 34 and has had more than 3,600 confirmed cases. For more, we go to Eagle Butte, South Dakota, to the reservation, where we're joined by Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe Chairman Harold Frazier. Chairman, welcome to Democracy Now! Thank you so much for joining us. Can you explain what's happening now? How many checkpoints, COVID checkpoints, have you set up? And what are they for? What are you doing when the cars are stopped?
Yeah, good morning. Right now we have 9 checkpoints on a reservation. And, you know, one of the biggest concerns we have is safety. And we are looking, and as soon as we get more equipment, we intend to put up another checkpoint. You know, the main purpose of these checkpoints is to try to, you know, number one, keep the virus out, and number two is track if it comes in, because we always been saying that the virus does not travel. It's the people with virus that travel. So we know that that's the only way that that virus will get into our homes is if it's brought in from the outside, and that's the main purpose of these checkpoints, is to keep our people safe and also to ensure that they have the right to live.
Well, Chairman Frazier, what about the governor's perspective or viewpoint that these checkpoints are illegal? What's your response to that? Could you talk about the treaties, the existing treaties between your nation and the federal government that might have some bearing on this, or do have bearing on this?
Well, we kind of look, and number one, the people who elected me to this position, they're the ones that are, I guess, so-called my boss. The governor is not my boss, or the federal government. It's the people that live here. That's who I work for, and that's who's I take directives from and such. But they haven't. We stepped up to do this. We feel that we have every right to do this. We have a treaty, the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty, Article 16. In that article, it says that, before any white man can travel or reside on our lands, they must get consent from the Indians first. In addition to our treaties, there's a case law, there's even a constitution that we swore to uphold against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that they give us all the legal right to do what we're doing. A lot of time, and we've been, studying the laws of this country for quite a while. How can somebody own something without paying for it? And that's the way we look at it, that these lands, these roads, they are ours because we were never paid for it. So we have every legal right to do that. And it doesn't matter, what comes today, tomorrow, we're still going to be here. We're still going to have and maintain our checkpoints.
Chairman Frazier, can you describe what happens at a checkpoint? And have you been at one? Talk about the people who are stopping the cars and what they're doing when they stop them.
Well, I've been there to all of our checkpoints numerous times. If a driver rolls up, and it all depends, if a driver rolls up and, they're asked some health questions, there's a questionnaire that they have to be filled out, and they're filled out by our deputies. So there's really no, I've seen some motorists where they just roll down their window part way and answer the questions. If they're coming in for essential travel, if they're a resident of the reservation or a member of the tribe or family to a resident or a member, they're asked the questions and they come in. If you're a motorist coming from a hotspot, your license plates show that. Every day we monitor that, where our people, where's the areas that we got to be concerned with. And if there are vehicles coming from that, then they will be asked to reroute their travel and not come through our lands. But we allow any commercial vehicles coming because, we need to have supplies just like everyone else. Medical people, they definitely are rolled in, but also too essential, and that's the postal service, the agriculture. That's a big thing on our reservation. So things like that, they're allowed to come and go, but they're all stopped and asked to fill out these questionnaires. And to expedite, there are a lot of locals, particularly the agriculture. They numerous times they come and go to. Sometimes they have land in other areas. So what we put together was a process to obtain a permit, an agriculture permit or essential travel permit, and them motorists usually just roll up, just show their permit number, and they're allowed just to keep going. I usually it just probably takes a minute to a minute and a half, and if you're not coming from a hotspot, you're generally just allowed to just roll on. So it's not really any, in my opinion, hindrance of any motorist. And again, the main purpose is to try to save lives. And I know there was issue that we should work together. And that's something that I agree with. But, you know, with our population, with our lack of medical facilities, things like that, we know, and we just look to our relatives to the south, the Navajo Nation, and see what's going on there. And that could easily be us. And we've been watching that. So that's why we stepped up to do these type of actions to try to keep our people safe and definitely save their lives.
And Chairman Frazier, you mentioned the lack of medical facilities. Could you talk about that? Because you issued a strict stay-at-home measures, while the governor of the state did not, of South Dakota did not. What is the situation? You only have 8 hospital beds and 1 ICU, as I understand it, in your on your lands.
Well, we have 8 hospital beds. We don't have no ICU. There are 6 ventilators. We have 1 respiratory therapist, and I'm being told by our medical people that generally they monitor 2 to 3 ventilators, and they could do 4, but that's pushing it. The nearest facility for critical care is in Rapid City, and it's about a 3-hour drive just to get to Rapid. And that has always been the practice of the Indian Health Service, is to get the care that some of our people need. They generally get referred out. And but when we started this, we started looking at numbers and the number of residents. And when we broke it down, that maybe 50% would possibly get the virus. And when they were saying that 80% can be handled at home, and that left 20. And we looked at the numbers and we realized that there's a potential that we may need 1,200 beds. And when we only have 8, I mean, that really woke up a lot of people, you know, here at home.
Chairman Frazier, can you talk about the 1 confirmed COVID case you've had on the reservation and how the checkpoint led you to be able to identify that person?
Yeah, that patient come in, I believe, like on a Thursday, and they knew where they come from. Our command center, which works directly with the checkpoints, they needed a patient come from an area that what we call a hotspot. Our medical people immediately start monitoring every day. You know, being in contact and so forth. And then that following Tuesday is when the patient wasn't feeling well. They took her into the hospital. They ran a test and was tested positive. In a matter of less than probably 8 hours, I would say, because the very next morning, they already knew the contact and of who they were. And then people were put into quarantine. And right now, the patient's doing well, and we're pretty happy about that. But that's the whole purpose of that, because we you know, if we didn't know any of that, and an individual come and they didn't realize they were infected by the virus, they could easily went and you know, immediately that could have went into a community spread, which is something that we know we're definitely not capable of handling.
And Chairman, the governor has threatened to take your tribe to court over the checkpoints, while other lawmakers have urged her to try to negotiate and reach a common agreement. Could you talk about the state's relationship to your tribe over the years?
Well, you know, it just, you know, as a matter of fact, I was just reading something last night. Rapid City, a lot of our members live out there from, you know, us, Ogallala, Rosebud. A lot of our Sioux relatives live out there, and there's a IHS service unit out there. And they ran some tests, and there were 16 positive cases. And I was just reading that, and I was going to get some verification later today, but it sounded like one of the individuals that tested positive, the State Department of Health didn't even contact that individual till 3 days later. So you know, we know, you know, the treatment we get from the state and the federal government, and that's why we're really doing these things, because we know when times get tough, all we have is each other.
I mean, this is a very significant situation.
It's important that we step up and.
You have
Yes.
Governor Noem, the South Dakota governor. I mean, when you look at the meat packers in Sioux Falls, for example, the mayor was begging the governor to shut down the plant. This is before Trump's executive order that said the state couldn't. You had hundreds and hundreds of workers, mainly immigrant, overwhelmingly immigrants, who were testing positive. And yet the governor refused to do this. This is the same governor now that is saying she will challenge you, demanding you take down these checkpoints. So what are you willing to take this to, Chairman? Could this lead to a showdown, a standoff, not just legally, but between the state and your tribe?
Well, you know, we have no other alternative. We won't back down. You know, no matter what they do, whether it's through the court or they come by force, we will be still there because we live here. And you know, we looked at everything. You know, when we started planning and getting ready back in early March, you know, that's some of the scenarios we threw out at you know, our plans was for legal as well as medical. So I'm confident that, you know, if she wants to take us to court, you know, go ahead and do it, you know, and I believe in my heart that we're going to be successful. And the main reason why is we're doing these things for the right reasons. It's not to benefit economically, or we're not doing this to destroy somebody's business, their lives. I mean, we're doing it for the good, you know, the good of God. And what we've been saying is, you know, the number one, you know, right is the right to live. You know, I know that I've seen words being thrown out there about liberties and civil rights and First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, and so forth. But the right to live, I believe, is above all of them. And that's what we want to do, ensure that our residents here have that right to live.
And Chairman Frazier, you mentioned courts. Could you talk about the recent victory of the Cheyenne River Sioux over the Trump administration, where the Trump administration attempted to use some federal COVID-19 monies that were intended for the tribes to go instead to the Alaska Native corporations?
Yeah, you know, we you know, it was nothing against the native villages, but we felt that business corporations that's chartered under the state that is not federally recognized, we felt that they shouldn't get that because we believe that that money was set aside for Native Americans. And you know, the interesting thing, as of today, we still have not been notified how much we're going to receive here on Cheyenne River. I know a lot of our relatives in North Dakota and the other South Dakota tribes have received or been at least notified how much they're going to receive. But as of this morning, we have not been notified what we're going to receive. So we've been kind of thinking, well, I guess they pretty upset for us taking them to court. Maybe they're going to give it to us. But I guess hopefully by today, we would know if we're going to receive any of that funding.
That's from the CARES Act. The tribes were demanding something like $20 billion. Ultimately was settled on $8 billion, but that's been very slow to make its way out to the various nations. Finally, Harold Frazier, very quickly, if you can talk about the significance of a legal battle here and what it could mean, for example, for the future of ongoing struggles like your fight against the Keystone XL Pipeline.
Oh yeah, I mean, most definitely. And you know, there's already been case law. The recent one in reference to roads and highways was in 1990, and I just can't think where they're coming from. And I, you know, reading what the lawmakers, the state legislature put out there. I mean, and then even that the governor has been on briefings saying that, you know, they have no jurisdiction. So I mean, I'm just kind of totally shocked and almost unbelievable what's going on because, you know, there's no way that they can win. There's just no way. And yet, and then too, we're trying to focus and you know, stay prepared for this kind of unbelievable.
Well, I
was like,
want to thank you so much, Harold Frazier, for joining us, Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe Chairman, speaking to us from Eagle Butte in South Dakota from the reservation. When we come back, we go to Chicago, where COVID-19 took Black lives first. It didn't have to. And then we talk about Los New Yorkers, those New Yorkers who are undocumented at the center of the pandemic, who are essential yet.
All right. So I thought that was very helpful for me as a relative not from the area to kind of place a little bit more of the details into perspective. So yeah, I guess I wanted everybody to see that, to get some background information. And I guess my question for the panelists right now is, are there any updates to what was mentioned on the video in your respective nations up today?
Today, this morning, Governor Noem did a press conference, and she was addressed with the situation at hand. And they had asked if she was going to pursue litigation. And she had said that she has not backed down either, and that she proposed a plan of action to both CRST and Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe and Oglala Sioux Tribe, and that there hasn't been a response. And the way she's taking it is that they haven't declined, but they haven't accepted. So I feel like it's still at that standstill, and everything is still heightened where it's what we've seen in the video.
Right. And I also have been seeing some Instagram infographics of ways or people to contact. Do you think that political pressure is our best tool at this moment? Aside from obviously donating to COVID-19 response?
Go ahead, Robin. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I was going to wave my hand. I absolutely think that the way we can do is go a step above Governor Noem and apply political pressure. Senator Rounds and Thune and Dusty Johnson are any other political senators and Congress people that are pro-Indian country. And bombard them in Washington that a governor has no right to tell a tribe what to do. I stand firm in that aspect, that we are lawmakers and policymakers of our own nations, and that there's 9 strong nations in the state of South Dakota. And for a very long time, we have not been held as South Dakotans, and we are the originals. And I'm very disappointed, and I keep sending letters every week to Senator Thune and the representatives from South Dakota, because if they want me to get out the vote and push Native voters, then we need to be treated like South Dakotans, because we're the originals here. And so I think it's very important that everybody gets on Washington, D.C., and Senator Thune is the second in command there with Republican-wise, and I always say the whip, the Takalas, we call them Takalas in our society, so he should be strong, like we are with our Takalas in our whip society, and whip them back into shape and tell that governor, back off, you have no say here. These are our laws and our way to protect our people, and for once let us protect our people the way we see fit. And so I 100% stand behind our leadership. I always have, from the moment we made laws in 2012 to turn mega load trucks back on these U.S. highways and these state highways, which I say are our highways. I don't care what anyone tells me, any lawyer says to me. These highways do not go to any fort. And by a fort, I mean, we said you could peaceably bring your cargo through to your fort, your army fort. Cheyenne River Sioux tribe may be a prisoner of war camp, but it is not a fort, and there is no military base here. So your cargo does not need to come here anymore. And your cargo, meaning oil cargo or your precious whatever cargo, does not need to come here. Your precious pandemic cargo, none of that. My people, our people are precious, and we are protecting them. So I encourage all the people, all your devices, find them emails and Twitter and Instagram and every social media you can possibly do every day. You send letters and you call them and you flood them. What better time do we have on our hands to flood Washington, D.C. and the state capital of Pierre? And them are our homelands. So I encourage us to do that. And I just wanted to say they are very much our chairman stated, she said, she sent us a letter saying, this is a 3-part plan, and this is what I demand you guys to do. No, Governor Noem, you don't demand us to do anything. Thank you for your excellent plan here that somebody wrote for you. Maybe the tribal relations or something wrote this for you, but we do not do what you want us to do, tell us to do. So we'll get back to you when we get back to you. Right now, we are still going to protect our people, and we're going to protect all 4 directions of what's coming at us. So, like I said, I don't speak for the tribe, but I do know that if you go to CRC COVID-19 updates every day at noon, our tribal chairman is updating us every day at noon, and he tells us exactly what's happening and what the response is with Governor Noem. So I encourage everybody to look at those as well, or go onto the Facebook and listen to his updates. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely. I think above everything, this is definitely an issue of, tribal sovereignty and enforcing that, and all of our relatives all over Turtle Island, coming and stepping in to support that. And I really appreciate your perspective, Robin. We do have a question from Facebook. Lori McCrantz asks, what justification does this governor give for opposing the tribe's right to checkpoints? And either of y'all can answer.
So far, her justification are all false. She's been stating that there isn't access for emergency service, that there isn't access for essential deliveries to bring food in. She's stating that there's not access for agriculture and the means for folks to come through who are delivering. And she even stated, how is the state supposed to bring supplies and emergency services if you have these roadblocks? But every single one of those talking points she justified are false. Every single one of those are stated even in the executive orders, that essential supplies, essential workers, it's a matter of, like Robin stated, following that tribal protocol of applying for a permit and abiding by tribal jurisdiction, abiding by that tribal sovereignty. And so each one of those are completely false, because when you go through those checkpoints, they do ask, and they have their own protocol of their questionnaires and following CDC protocol of asking if you've had any body aches, if you've been exposed, if you've left the state, just all those questions that are protecting, and also that give us the data, like how Tribal Chairman Fraser had stated, they were able to follow through their own procedure to locate when and where their first COVID case came through. So I know that that's the situation at hand is basically, the government or the governor not abiding by tribal sovereignty. And they did talk about, civil liberties, but I work for the ACLU and I'm also a lobbyist. And I feel like every single thing that we've been watching, including her deficit and providing a statewide shelter at home and closing our state, is part of this underlying advocacy that she has for the KXL pipeline, to even make pipeline an essential construction work component. So if there was a statewide shutdown, the KXL construction can still continue as essential work. And so, you know, talking about those man camps, and I feel like a lot of her address is to CRST because they are obstructing the access for those man camps and for those, you know, the KXL pipeline workers who are going through and accessing instead of having to go all the way around. I feel like we're inconveniencing their work with our tribes holding our own sovereignty with our checkpoints and protecting our tribal nations and tribal members. As a lobbyist, this past legislative session, she very much showed her colors when she pushed the second 2.0 version of the riot boosting bill. So that in itself is going into law on July 1st. And she made her initial standpoint trying to state that she's in communication with TC Energy and that they wouldn't be doing construction until midsummer. So that aligns with the law that she created, the House Bill 1117, which is the riot boosting bill. And so I feel like everything that's we're witnessing has this underlying intent to support KXL, the Keystone Pipeline.
If I could just follow up with something too, on top of all of that, moderator, I forgot your name.
Oh yeah, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
So I just want to say to the question person too is on top of all of that, how she's trying to justify it is she's trying to say is that the U.S. Highway 212 for us, and I forget that maybe Highway 18 and something else down in Ogallala, is a United States highway, which means it's federal jurisdiction. And she's trying to say that Highway 60, South Dakota Highway 63 belongs to, because of who maintenances it. Now in order for you to understand how people feel like their civil rights and all of this, you got to look at the funding of it. And so basically in the maintenance of these highways. So here's your asphalt. If you could see like an asphalt, you know, just the asphalt, and underneath that asphalt and around in the ditches and all of that. So all that the highway, the South Dakota highway is doing is maintaining this asphalt. They are just grading it, and they are just snow come, they're icing it, you know, they're fixing the potholes, blah blah blah, right? Everything there to me belongs to tribes that in their exterior boundaries, this exterior boundary here, these highways belongs to the tribes. And if the federal government would stop pussyfooting around and give the tribes direct funding of those roads. See, they funnel everything through the state of South Dakota. This happens wherever any state is. We don't need the states for nothing because we know how to read and write. They taught us all this stuff right here. See? They taught us all that, but they try to beat this out of us, our Lakota language, you know, Tolo Wanich, you know, there's no meat. They taught us, they took away that from us, but what they taught us how was their white language. So they could give us direct funding of these United States highways in the South Dakota highways. That's the problem. Their roads people have all, we're not blocking anything over here. They can go up and down all these highways. Like Candy said, the people, the UPS, the food distributors, the alcohol distributors, everybody's coming in and out. They're just doing their little health check here and there. But the federal government, the Department of Transportation, could give the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe and the other 9 tribes in the state of South Dakota direct funding. Include that in your letters whenever you write. Direct funding, and then we won't need the South Dakota over here in our business. That's why we don't want the highway patrol here, because we don't need them either. We have our own highway patrol here. It's the Indian Highway Safety. See, so you have to understand that there's levels of government, and all it is who's funding it, and they're funneling it through the state of South Dakota so they can get their administrative cost, and they can get the cost of maintenance dollars to maintenance these roads. And they need to come and maintenance our roads, the federal government right now, because of the flooding and stuff. And she wants to be in control of allowing her highway patrol to issue those permits for the oil companies, the big oil companies. So there's a bigger story. So when you're educating yourself in all this background of laws and stuff, you have to educate yourself on how the federal government in the state of South Dakota and the local governments like tribes, that's what it's boiling down to, is who's gonna control the purse strings, okay? That's how they wanna control us, when they should just give us our jurisdiction back. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you both, Candy and Robin. I'd love to hear more, and I'm sure the rest of our attendees would love to hear a lot more about the 2 points that you guys both brought up. One, tying it into the Keystone XL Pipeline, and then two, kind of the political hierarchy that is involved, and how that relationship is with the tribes. So I guess I wanted to ask if both Robin and Candy, if you could please drop your Twitter and your Facebook into the chat so that people can follow up on this information. In the meantime, we did get a question, or rather a comment on Facebook from a non-native named Vicky Williams, who is kind of just asking for other non-natives to respect tribal wishes to no longer vacation on tribal grounds, which I think we can all agree on. But definitely, if you're non-native, something that you can do is stay off of our sacred lands, especially during a pandemic. It's really important that we protect our tribal communities in that way. I guess I also wanted to talk a little bit about COVID-19 on your respective tribal communities, and maybe point us into the direction for donations and updates. And I think both of y'all briefly mentioned that in the chat or through the emails that we've been corresponding with. So if you guys could give a little bit of an update on that, as well as resources, that would be great.
Okay, one thing before we move on, I dropped in the chat a link to an article that was just released. We released a press release yesterday from the ACLU supporting, and this goes not just for South Dakota, but we got it approved through National. So National supports this as well, the American Civil Liberties Union, supporting the tribes and stating that Governor Kristi Noem is in the wrong. And that exactly what Robin is saying, we're not just tribal members, we are voting constituents. And we need to be treated like voting constituents of these districts, who are also legislative and senators who receive our votes and our tax dollars. So I put a link in there. There's an article that was put out from our press release with our support from the American Civil Liberties Union backing the tribes.
Definitely. And a quick update to what I said previously. Vicky is native, so stand in solidarity with Vicky. What she said is on point. We need to continue to educate our non-native allies to stay off of our sacred lands. And we do have Robin's Twitter and Facebook on the chat too. So if you have your phones handy, or if you want to go ahead and open up another tab to your internet browser, you can follow for some updates there. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to pop in right now. We're kind of like playing this by ear a little bit.
I could give it on our what's happening here.
Yeah, please do.
So far we've only had one positive case, and the family was quarantined, and we've they're in recovery. The one person is in recovery, and the family has come off of quarantine. So far, a lot of people that are leaving the reservation and going to hot spots, let's say for medical appointments and such. If you have a heart appointment or you have to go to dialysis, some people do leave for dialysis or different, because, a lot of our specialists are off reservation, and a lot of them specialists are in Bismarck, Rapid City, peer cancer institutions and different things like that, because we only have one hospital. And so they are being asked to self-isolate and quarantine when they come back. So those families are, when they do come back from them appointments, have to do the 12 to 14 day self-isolation. And our stores, we do have 3 tribal run stores and 1 non-tribal run store. And so a lot of those stores and the convenience stores are practicing a lot of the social distancing. No more than 10 people. The masks have to be worn to go in. A lot of, like I said, the stores are complying to that. And we have an 8 p.m. curfew. Like I said, that level 3 consists that we have to stay in our homes, and that we can only go outside for medical, groceries, and outdoor activity or exercise. And so these health checkpoints, as you can see, they have helped immensely to flatten the curve, and they have helped to sustain our nation, is how I see. We're keepers of the 4 bands of the Great Sioux Nation, and they have tremendously helped us. And it's been really stringent that if you have anyone who has any questions, they can call our command center at 605-964-3637. And that's where you apply for a travel permit. If you're coming from a hotspot, they won't let you on. There's numerous different reasons that they will run through at that command center. And there's even a COVID hotline. So if you have symptoms or anything like that, it's manned by nurses. Like I said, the chairman has a noon every single day. He updates us every single day on what is happening. We also have a crstcoronavirusupdates.com. Again, that's crstcoronavirusupdates.com online website. And I also wanted to say that, I couldn't be more proud of our nations who are practicing the Border Patrol and the COVID-19 deputies that are out there. We've also had implemented Bike Patrol that is helping to curtail some of the curfew, so that the people are, going in, and that helps immensely with our law enforcement, because we're limited law enforcement, and that has always been the case in Indian country. And so that also helps, because we have 21 communities on roughly the size of Connecticut, encompassing 2 counties, Dewey and Ziebach, 2 of the poorest counties in all of the United States, So I did want to say that right now, it feels to us, some of us, that all around us is, and this happened 3 months ago, all around us is COVID, and it feels like it's closing in. But because we have these health checkpoints, it's able to allow our tribe to have some kind of handle on the situation of protecting our people, our elderly, our young, and to and trace, contact trace where people are coming from. And like you heard the chairman say, that helped us trace that first case. And so I really commend our Border Patrol. I commend our law enforcement, our frontliners. My sister's a NICU nurse in Montana. My dad's a FedEx driver in Pennsylvania. I mean, so I've got all kinds of people all over on the front lines. I also want to say one last thing. It's very important that people also, when we are standing on the treaties, 1851 and 1868 Fort Laramie treaties, that we remind people also that the United Nations Special Rapporteur had just put out that he is going to be doing a report on COVID-19. And if you recall, he came out a few years ago and he went to Indian country. And it's absolutely imperative that we gather all our documentation and we let him know absolutely what's been happening to the 577, I believe now, nations, and what has been happening to them, stripping nations. We're talking about sovereignty, stripping nations of their whole beings, you know, and now not bringing us services to the Navajo Nation, our relatives to the Navajo Nation. Sorry, I get choked up. And we have to stand together, because that is what our ancestors, all of our ancestors, have told us, you know, from the condor to the eagle. I mean, there's been many prophecies and visions, and people on the outside wouldn't know what we were talking about, because they don't know our original natural rights and our original natural laws that connect us to earth, Unchimaka, and what is standing us strong here and protecting us. It's more than this constitution, our tribal constitution. These two things are linked together. It's this. That's why I said we have to pay attention to this. So I wanted to remember to gather all of our documentation, because the Special Rapporteur for the United Nations is coming, and it is absolutely blasphemy what is happening to our nations, and that the assistance is not coming here once again, and that the United States of America owes to each and every one of our tribes. So please, along with getting a hold of Washington, D.C., we need to let them know that they can no longer define our conditions. Like Russell Means and them said, they no longer is the USA able to unilaterally define our condition, our rights, our future, and we need to let them know that this is absolutely a crime of genocide, what they have been doing to us during this COVID-19 global pandemic. And I want to give a shout out to all of the indigenous people for standing up and making it happen with what little resources they have, for saving their nations, a race of people. They have been saving the race of people. And if we keep it up, we will be able to save our race of people. They aren't going to wipe us out yet. We will wopala tonka hetchatu.
Wow, thank you. That was super powerful. And I think you put it in a really inspiring way. I definitely think like that's like one of the initiatives with this series, is kind of to get that ball rolling. Intertribal solidarity is something that we really need to flesh out and continue to work on. And collectively, yeah, we're trying to like identify settler colonialism and how it works, self-determination, tribal sovereignty, and have these like examples in front of us and kind of talk through them with panelists and as a community as well. I mean, we're seeing the same themes in Mashpee Nation, in Shinnecock Nation, Wet'suwet'en, Southwestern tribes like the Diné Nation, Apache, Ute, Hopi, And so I do like want to stress what Robin is talking about and continuing to have these like relationships and continue to build on them. And I think one of those ways for us now is really fleshing out the COVID-19 relief work that all of our tribes are doing, because I think that's something that can turn into mutual aid and continue to like help us help our communities without border towns. So with that said, I know that Candy posted a COVID-19 relief, or maybe it's just a care package, but could you talk a little bit more about that, and if there's volunteer opportunities, or what are the details of the Two-Spirit care packaging?
Okay, so I put that link up along with my my handles for Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, because you had asked, you know, if there was opportunities for donations, and you definitely can go to either one of our CRST or Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe or Oglala Sioux Tribe tribal pages. You can Google it, and they have links and information. And I wanted to advocate for the Two-Spirit youth, because that's some of the work that I'm doing right now. Is I've been hosting Two-Spirit youth talking circles, so that these youth have a place and a space to speak and to vent that's safe. And excuse me, because of being on the reservation myself during our lockdowns, you know, I have both of my teenagers are Two-Spirit identified, and they themselves have been having a hard time. And even just being an adult, I wanted to create that space. And like I had said before we started the Zoom call, I'm also going to be hosting on June 2nd a Two-Spirit Tuesday on the social distancing powwow, and inviting folks to, I'm creating an itinerary to co-host with Whitney Rain Counter, so that we can do a grand entry and we can have other folks show up and speak and share what it means to be Two-Spirit, and also create that space throughout Turtle Island, because June is Pride Month, and Pride has pretty much been canceled across the board. And you know, just having a couple care packages the other day for Two-Spirit youth, they're already heightened with suicidal ideation. And I know this pandemic, and even just being on the reservation and having so many lockdowns, where on the Oglala Sioux Tribe, we just went through a whole 2 weeks of, we couldn't even leave our homes. You know, there was a 72-hour lockdown where it was $1,000, where if you were even driving on the reservation. And so because we started to heighten the cases, and right now there's 10 cases on the Pine Ridge Reservation, but we know there's also, you know, just so much more, because we're 2 weeks behind the actual data that we're receiving. And within 2 weeks, the formula is that it triples. And so myself, as I was speaking before the Zoom call started, or the live feed started, my daughter and myself went and delivered wood, water, propane, and food, as much as I could fit in my vehicle, to one of the Unchi elders who was a water protector, and who was there from the beginning all the way through the end, to both Unchi Howland Red Feather and Regina Brave. Both had needs, both aren't receiving what they need. And, you know, it is, some folks are having a hard time getting to them, also because they're so remote. And that's the same mentality of a lot of these Two-Spirit youth who are being completely silenced and forgotten. And I wanted them to know you're not forgotten. So I put the link up there. And it, you know, like I stated, my two teenagers are both Two-Spirit identified, and that's something they wanted to contribute. And also the youth who are in my talking circle that is hosted by the ACLU. And my position is the Indigenous Justice Organizer, but a component of that is to bring visibility to the Two-Spirit component across the spectrum of LGBTQ.
Thank you so much for the work you're doing. Yeah, I think like oftentimes people will kind of like clump us all into like one like demographic, but we're vast and our experiences are vast, and you know, people still have like access to, I don't know, different sources of support. Obviously it's a lot more drastic on like our tribal communities, but we definitely need to pay special attention and be very compassionate and empathetic to our relatives in domestically abusive homes, homes with mental illness, our unsheltered relatives, and our queer relatives. And that's such a good point to bring up. Thank you so much.
Two other things that I wanted to also advocate for was one thing that I saw that was very impactful. We had an emergency tribal council meeting on Saturday, and they read that letter that's been going around on Facebook from the city of Seattle. I feel like that's something that I'm going to push the ACLU. We have members who like to volunteer, and that's something everyone and anyone can do from home, is to encourage all the different metro cities, whether they're, you know, large cities, small cities, any cities, for those mayors to replicate that letter, to support the Oglala Sioux tribe and Cheyenne River, and, you know, express that what is happening is a violation of tribal sovereignty. So I have a copy of that. I was trying to see if I could put it in the group chat, but I couldn't find that. But I'll share that somehow. But there is a letter from the Seattle mayor, from Seattle, Washington, which was the original hotspot that kind of initiated what it looked like to have COVID-19 in the United States. That mayor had talked about how it was vitally important for the tribes to support the protection of our Oyate, of our tribal members. And the other one, and the other one I wanted to share was, so at this moment, I'm here in Rapid City, and there is a group of women who I'm working with, and we're cooking and providing meals for those Native families, those indigenous folks who are positive. They're being quarantined in their house, and there is no support here for the urban Indians. And they are, just like Tribal Chairman Fraser said on CNN, or with what was the video that we just watched?
Democracy Now?
Yes, on the Democracy Now! Interview, he stated, you know, a lot of their tribal members live in Rapid City, and that they're not getting that support that you would have if you were on the reservation. So there's a group of women who are cooking and providing traditional medicines, teas to these families, because a lot of the families aren't just one family, there's several families in one home. So all those families are getting quarantined and they can't leave, and you know, we're just trying to put together a support system of what that looks like. So I'm going to drop information in the link or in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, and that kind of touches a little bit on a question from Lauren Mariko that Robin actually kind of touched on. Lauren Mariko says, my 7th graders are learning about tribal sovereignty, and we are following what is happening in South Dakota with Cheyenne River Sioux. Today they contacted the governor, but they want to do more. What would you say that youth in Queens, New York can do right now to help? And yeah, just contacting the Governor Cuomo, and maybe, like you said, Candy, maybe writing a letter in solidarity with the Cheyenne River Sioux is probably something, or the Oglala Sioux and the Rosebud Sioux, to kind of back them up, hold them accountable. Yeah, if you guys wanted to expand on that, feel free to. And Otherwise, we will try. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I would probably be, I did put it in the, I don't know if people might watch this and then they can see what's in the questions or the questions that I answered. So I just want my tribe to know that I did put their donation information there. So it is Sioux.org. Has all their PayPal information and then their state bank information, you know, because if we do go into legal battle, we're going to need legal assistance, you know, have a legal fund. I'm sure there's other things that the tribe needs for donation wise. But I definitely know that when you go into these legal battles with the state, it costs a lot of money. And so Sioux.org, it has all their information on there. And of course, the state bank, if you go into the little, I don't know, if you look into the questions or whatever on the Zoom thing, it should have all that, right? And they have all their donation sites or their donation information on there. So it should have all that information for Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe's donation. Or if you go to the CRC COVID 19 updates or the CRC coronavirus updates.com should have all the links for all the official Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe donation sites on there, because I do know that it's lengthy battles. If she does try anything, we will need all the legal assistance that we can get with that. And I do know that you know, here it's very hard because of all the meat processing plants and stuff that went down too. So a lot of that stuff is on back order. So I'm sure there's a list somewhere of things that they may need. It might be on these web pages, but I just want to make sure. So if anyone questions me, I'll say, hey, it's in the Dropbox. I did mention that, and encourage everyone, like Candy said, I wrote it in that little typing thing to get a hold of all the other governors and mayors and all that to write the support letters as well. So Lila Wopalatanka. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And my last question was, are there any days that we as relatives and allies from the East need to pay attention to? I know there's going to be probably some more like court dates maybe, or litigation possibly, and I'm curious if we know those days off the top of our heads, and maybe we need to check back in for another session with Cheyenne, Sioux, Oglala, and Rosebud territories.
I don't know the dates off my top of my head. Maybe Candy does. I know there's some KXL dates coming up here, but not for right now. We don't know nothing like off the top of our heads for Governor Noem or anything like that on the current situation with Border Patrol. What the topic is here, I know for a fact we don't have any court dates or anything like that, and hopefully she is taking heeds to the warnings of other municipalities and other local governments that, you know, we're well within our rights to defend our nations. So hopefully she stands down as well, so we won't even have to get to that point. But as I know of any information right now, there is no dates as of yet.
Candy, would you like to chime in?
You know, that's everything Robin said is correct. There isn't any dates. I actually have a video I'm trying to cut real quick. I'm trying to clip it to the piece where she spoke today about her intent. And she stated that she is still going full force with legal ramifications. And I felt like today when she spoke, you know, she was threatening. She was continuing her stance of her threats of legal action. And so, you know, that's exactly what our tribal presidents, tribal chairmen have stated, is that they're not going to back down. So I do see us going forward, and the ACLU has represented the Oglala Sioux tribe and, you know, other environmental organizations and individuals who sued Governor Noem this past year, and we won because she was violating civil rights. So I think that was really huge yesterday for the ACLU to take that stance, because then we do have that stance of not only is our tribal sovereignty being compromised, but so is our civil liberties as constituents of South Dakota.
Awesome. And I think you said we can find that on Facebook, correct?
Yes, you can go to the ACLU South Dakota Facebook page, but I also put the link in. It was the first link I put in here. I think I shared it from my Facebook page, but it was definitely the article, and I gave quotes, you know, speaking about how litigation isn't the best venue. There needs to be that essential communication, because that's what the government expects from tribal nations, is government to government consultation.
Okay. Thank you so much. We're running pretty close to time with the panel and discussion. So I just wanted to offer both Robin and Candy some time to maybe say things that you felt like you needed to mention or re-emphasize anything. Again, we really appreciated hearing what you guys had to say, and hopefully we'll have you back on our panel sometime again in the future.
Okay, I'll go. Remember, tribal sovereignty is not just saying we have the treaty. When we talk about tribal sovereignty, we have to remember what our ancestors gave up and what they fought and died for. And so when it comes to protecting our borders, and we have to remember that they fought and died for this very right. And it's one of the only things I feel like we ultimately have the most control over, because they took our criminal jurisdiction from us, and they have in ex parte, Crow Dog, and all these bad Indian laws. And so we have to remain that tribal sovereignty is who we are. It comes not only in a sense of a piece of paper, but it's in a sense of self-determination and in our hearts and our way of life too. And it's something that someone looking in on tribal nations doesn't understand, because we're so rooted in our traditional ways that that's something that the United States government and those looking on the outside don't really understand unless you're rooted to your culture and your tradition and your language and all of that sense. So remember, when you're fighting tribal sovereignty, that you remember all of those things that rooted you from your ancestors on up. And I just want to say that during these pandemic times, that we all have to remember that we are in this together, and that no matter what our beliefs are and what we're striving to move forward to, that if we stick together and we remember our societal ways, and that our old way of life, not in a sense of living in the teepee and living that way, but if we bring in those societal ways and we make them strong again, that's what will make us survive. And we have to remember those ways, and some of those ways were strict. Remember, the Lakotas were compassionate, yes, but they were fierce. And a lot of our bands, from the Dene to the Apache to the Amazonian, they were fierce. Indigenous people were fierce. So remember, we can fight a pandemic too, because we were fierce. Yes, we were compassionate, but we were fierce leaders. So we have to remain fierce on protecting our nations, because that's what our race of a nation depends on. Our elders and our future young people, they depend on us saving our nation. So we have to remind people that tribal sovereignty is everything to us, because it is a root of our DNA, is rooted into this land that is out here. It's rooted in so deep. And I love how she is healing herself, and it is all coming out because we are connected to the sky, to the Wichakpi Nation, the Star Nation, to the ground we walk on. That is all part of sovereignty too. So remember all the political side of it, but if we remember how we're connected, some of us will be connected to the Chinupa, the pipe, the tree, in all these ways. Sovereignty all the way up to the laws, the natural laws, these all exist for us because we're indigenous, that it keeps us rooted here. And that's how we are going to beat the state of South Dakota. Lila Wopala Tonka.
And I just want to begin by saying we are not in the same boat. You know, I keep seeing and hearing a lot of that, and I was born and raised on Prisoner of War Camp 334. You know, and you can Google that. That's the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. We're not on the same boat because we were intentionally placed in these prisoners of war camps to die. We were, even to this day, like our tribal governments are held back by BIA from flourishing, from that economic tribal development. There are so many attributes to being placed on this reservation. And as Robin stated, you know, it was that exchange for stealing and raping and colonizing Unchimaka from Turtle Island throughout the United States and taking our land even right here in the Black Hills and in South Dakota. And so when I witnessed and went into the hot spots on my reservation, into Wounded Knee, and I've seen families sitting on the porch together, you know, their hearts were on the ground. And to, you know, I stayed in my car and I stayed at a safe distance to, you know, pass out face masks. You know, it was heartbreaking because people came running even from other houses, you know, and it was just so heartbreaking that they, you know, to have someone come and offer what they weren't having access to. I seen, you know, Unchi's grandmothers crying, you know, and it was just so heartaching and heartbreaking. And every time I drove away crying, and it was just so hard. It still is. It's so hard to see my Oyate, to see our strong, fierce warrior families, you know, sitting there, knowing with the hope in their heart and their eyes that we're being protected by these borders, that our Akichita are standing up and we're doing everything within our power to maintain and protect, because that's exactly who we are. You know, and for myself, I continue to speak and advocate because I am a direct descendant from Crazy Horse's band. You know, my great-great-grandfather was the Whitman, and that's exactly what, you know, Robin started talking about from the get-go. We have these traditional protocols, these kinship rules, and the way we navigate our Tioshpaes and Tiwahes. And I do believe that, you know, this is part of, you know, it's a historical empowerment of a lifetime, because we do have our traditional ways. We do have this time. And it also, it came back to me when I was driving home yesterday. You know, we are in this place where we have been raised with our culture and our traditions. And now we are quarantined in our homes with our families. And it's time for us to ground ourselves and to reconnect with our children and with our siblings and with even ourselves and our own health and well-being. And that we have this opportunity not to go back to the same, but to move forward and evolve into what is healthy and what is going to flourish and support our future generations. And I'm so grateful for my experience at Standing Rock. I was the founder and camp leader for the Two-Spirit Nation camp. And to watch and to see and to have this construct of traditional livelihood and to be able to have a network is also bringing light to our experience today. And I always had said that, you know, that was our ancestors calling us to learn and understand what our individual medicines are and our empowerment to help the Oyate and to help each other, and to also be able to utilize those ceremonies on an individual basis instead of always depending on a medicine man or organized religion to tell us how to be grounded, and that we can continue reaching out to each other. And even this Zoom call in itself, you know, I lit some sage, I did say a prayer, because I feel like every time we exchange energy, whether it's virtual or even in person, that's a ceremony in itself. So Wopila Tonka.
Thank you. Thank you both for being on this call. Like Robin said, two fierce individuals here on this call with us, and I'm really appreciative of the information that we are leaving here with. And yeah, please everybody follow the Twitters and the Facebook so you can stay up to date. Hopefully we'll have a check back in if needed. Until then, continue to apply political pressure and really advocate for those letters of solidarity as far in regards to standing in solidarity with the Oglala, the Cheyenne River Sioux, and the Rosebud Nations. We really need to focus on that, those networking relationships, and yeah, and this is the perfect time to do it. With that said, so we are going to be meeting next week, continuing on with this series. I wanted to know if anybody had any suggestions for what we should talk about next week. And if you have any suggestions, you can unmute yourself and voice those, or you can also put that in the chat. In the meantime, Tanis, would you be able to give a rundown of the upcoming H events for this week?
Sure. Here. So tomorrow, Wednesday, it's a new time. We have Fit Native TV Live, which is workout classes that I lead. 1 p.m. It's a new time, 1 p.m. Eastern. And then tomorrow night at 5 p.m. Eastern, we have our Sacred Spaces, honoring our elders and our stories of living culture, where we have a guest of honor. And this week's guest is Zubin, or Zubin, I've never said your last name out loud. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly. Ornelas? Correct me if I'm wrong. I'll be chatting with Zubin tomorrow. And Thursday at 8 o'clock Eastern, we have our Native Theater live play reading series. And tomorrow we're reading a play called Silent Quest by Don Jameson. Don is Cayuga. And that will be streamed on Facebook Live. The Fit Native TV, you can join via Zoom. Storytelling, you can join via Zoom, or you can just watch on Facebook Live also, just like we're doing right now. Friday, we have another Fit Native class at 1 o'clock again. And then Friday evening, and I'm not sure the time with this, Sheldon, you might want to let me know. We do have our Wellbriety program. It's our mission for that is healing the wounded spirit, wellness, and clearing the clouded mind with the AICH Medicine Wheel Wellbriety program. And then Saturday, Sunday from 12 until 2, we have another version of Sacred Spaces, but it's a little more private. It's an Honoring Our Elders talking circle that you can join privately only via Zoom. So if you're interested in any of these, and Sunday at 3 o'clock, we also have Sheldon's live Facebook updates. And then, yeah, if you are interested in any of these events, just shoot me an email, tanis@aich.org, and I can make sure that you get the proper information.
Thank you, Tanis. So we have one suggestion going back to MASHP. I think we've been doing a good job of staying up to date on all of that. Also, if anybody has any questions, we still have 6 minutes to ask questions for our two lovely panelists. So feel free to unmute yourself, like I said, and ask away. If you have any questions outside of our panel and discussion. I think going back to MASHP would be a good idea, just because, like Kaylee said, tomorrow MASHP goes to court, and from what we know, it should be good news, but this is one step in a long journey, so it's important that we stay up to date on all of that. So I'll reach out to them and see if now's a good time, or if we want to, or if they want to have like a little bit more time to get grounded with their community first before check-ins. All right, any last thoughts, anybody? Also, thank you, Sheldon, for organizing the panelists today. Thank you, Sheldon.
Oh no! Thank you, my relatives, my people. Thank you for Candy. Thank you, Wopila, Robin. This has been a really great. This really hits home. You know, I'm from Cheyenne River too, so this, you know, my prayers are out there with everybody. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Also, just oh, go ahead, Robin. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, I was just waving at Sheldon. Yeah.
Cute. All right. Anything to add, Rick or Ty or Melissa?
I have a suggestion. You know, Candy said she works with a lot of the youth down there, Two-Spirited Youth and stuff too, and I support that. But I also do, like I said, I'm a co-founder of One Mind Youth Movement, and one of those things is we started that, and they did a lot of the Cowboy and Indian Alliance in 2012 at the very first big movement of KXL, and we went to Washington D.C. We camped on the wall, or the mall, and all of that, and we shut down Independence Street, Constitutional Ave. We also did the first climate march in New York City with over 400,000. You know, I was on the big old horn, so you didn't really see me because I was in front of all of the 400,000 people and leading the chants and all of that. But so I was at the beginning of all of that stuff, and I did a lot of stuff, but I don't really talk about all of that because, you know, the feds actually come knocking on my door. And so I just slammed the door in their face most of the time. So, and tell them to talk to my lawyer. And so, but anyways, I also push a lot of things with the youth, and I usually don't do interviews and all of that and put my face on the thing. So I would suggest talking to some of the youth and maybe setting up a panel, or a lot of them are out here, maybe some from different, are even seeing if you could get some of those who have been in quarantine and got off of the quarantine process, and see if they would be able to speak in what they've been going through and what their suggestions are for other people, because a lot of them have been dealing with the stigmatism and how everybody is shunning them, and how they have had to deal with, oh my God, you know, you have COVID, and, you know, so just that lateral oppression, you know, that is coming with having the virus. And so I think instead of people being compassionate and trying to take care of one another, they are shunning people for having this just like those who are wearing masks are being shunned for wearing a mask, are wanting stricter rules from the chairmans or presidents to enforce stricter rules. Some people want it stricter because of too many people going out. They can't even handle what rules are here right now. So I think if we're still staying on the global pandemic topic areas and going in different ways like that, then I think them are some of the topic things, because right here, I feel like one of the top, we talked about tribal sovereignty, but for us here, what has really brought out something that is just really disheartening to me is that it brought out a divide too in our people, I felt like. And it's just really hard for me to see that it's happening to us, that simple rules has brought out the how some feel like their rights have been violated, and some people feel like they don't want a curfew, and all those things, and it really has brought out the ugliness in humans and humanity is how I feel. And I really want to discuss it, and I really want to and so now that I have an avenue to bring that up real fast in these last seconds, I really wish that there was an avenue or someone to discuss this, because I really think that it was not cool of a person to show a gun and threaten our border patrol. And then even for governor to me, the governor should be also charged with bringing these threats upon our people, because again, some of these no DAPL have PTSD of being there in a prayerful way. Our border patrol are unarmed. They're just there with a clipboard taking a house survey, asking you a few questions, and if something goes on, they call for backup from a police officer, but yet these people are treating them so horrible that are coming through these checkpoints, and they are being so violent towards them, even some running right through and at fast speeds in a car. And I used to be a police officer. And so this disheartens my heart as to what's happening. So I suggest a couple of those topics, and even maybe throwing some youth in there talking about the racism and what the division of a global pandemic does to humanity after they've had to deal with this kind of lockdown environment after 3 months. So that's something I'd like to see, some kind of forum and people speaking about just about that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think opening it up to youth, I think, is something that we should venture off into, because they're obviously social distancing and quarantine right now too. Yeah. Rick, I think you had something to say. No? Okay, Ty, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, I just want to say thank you so much to Robin and Candy for your words and just spending this time here so we can get the messages out. And I'm here in New York City, Oneida, Ojibwe, and it's just such a great time to learn from relatives across Turtle Island. So I just wanted to say miigwech to you both. And yeah, I guess since we're at the end here, I just had a question, and it is about what is your dream for the Cheyenne River Sioux Nation and the communities that you're identifying with for the future? If you were to look back when you, if you're 100 years old and to look back, what would you want to see change? And I know that's a big question, but I think oftentimes it feels like we're battling and fighting constantly. So I'm just curious, each of you individually are so dynamic in this conversation. I was wondering what you hope and dream for the future of your people.
Well, I hope and dream that you know, everything that we're doing, and it, you know, and I do always take it back to my experience at Standing Rock, because it was the first, because I was living in Portland at that time, and, you know, the city, I could go a whole month without seeing another person of color or even another Native person. And so I moved home because I had severe PTSD, and I did see the beauty of living on the reservation. And I grew up on the reservation, and I followed what my elders asked me to do, to go get my education, to go out and get that experience, and then come home and bring it back to the Oyate. And I feel like there's so much historical trauma that is still there. You know, I can see my mom's trauma when she gets triggered by things, and I've educated my children. And when I came home from Standing Rock, I homeschooled them for a whole year, because I seen how they were impacted by my trauma being at Standing Rock, and also the trauma that they were going through because they were learning about what it means to be colonized. And, you know, I want so much for that healing to happen for our Oyate, so we can break those cycles, because my mom's trauma and my dad's trauma is from the boarding schools, and my parenting is part of that cycle that they went through, because they grew up without parents. They were stolen, and they grew up in the boarding school. So, you know, when I think about it, I see these children who only have a bubble of their worldview of being on the res in that poverty and witnessing that historical trauma. My dream is that they see the beauty in being on the reservation, because I came home with brand new eyes. I thought it was so amazing and such a blessing to not have to deal with colonial violence on a daily. I see the reservation as something so beautiful, and all the opportunities. And even though they are prisoner of war camps, you know, that's where we made ceremony, and where our ceremony ancestral lands are. So, you know, I can go big, or you know, for me, it comes back to taking that time to educate our youth on how to heal their trauma.
Robin, did you want to answer the question? It's kind of a big question, so.
Yeah, well, I hope, my hope and dreams, when I make it to 105 years old, being a strong Lakota matriarch, and after I've lived through a global pandemic, I hope and dream that the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe reestablishes their societies. And when they reestablish their societies, that they will show the people that how strong they can be with having a system that was in place for many years. And when they establish these societies, because basically that's what we're going back to right now, it is showing us that even though we are being apart, it is showing us that we are becoming stronger than we ever were before. And this is building us to become a strength of resistance that has never been seen before. These ways of our lives that we've gotten so lackadaisical or lax in and dependent on, that living with always taking more than what we needed, has shown us that the mighty promissory note that everybody values so much has woken us up in the last 3 months, that when we build our societies back up, we will know that living simply in the simplest way has what our ancestors have always taught us. And so my dream and my hopes for my people is to go back to that way of life, that taking no more than what you needed is what you learn from the beginning of 2020. And that this bigger message out here for us is not just about washing our hands and social distancing and showing us that these are not taking your civil rights away and your natural way of thinking. There is a bigger sense. So In 100 years, I will have told my 17-year-old son, see, I didn't keep your kolas and your mashkes away for a reason. I didn't try to take your freedom away to go out and be and make you wear a mask for a reason. I grew you up to be a strong Takala or a Kichita or a headsman or a Tanchan. These are words that mean chief, soldier, you know, whatever he decides to be. So I hope and pray and dream that we are rooted. I keep saying the words root because gardening has come back. So root yourself when you're feeling the earth. That's why I showed you guys my plants and stuff like that, because you're connecting, you're rooting yourself to Unchimaka, to earth, and she's healing. And she's healing all of us, and she's telling us to live simple, that we are depending on a promissory note that has no value. But you know what has value? Air, water, land, simple things. If we take care and we nurture them, she will sustain us. So my dreams are to build these societies and go back to the ways of life, like touch the cloud and rain in the face and sitting bull, crazy horse, and build those societies so strong that we remember the simple way of life so that we can nourish our own nagis, our own spirits and our own souls, and that we can rebuild all of this way so that our people will continue it on from this 2020, that when everything goes back to the so-called normal, that we remember that simplicity is what living this simple way in these months that we were locked down is what helped us come out of one of the major sicknesses and helped us to build our lives back to what our ancestors lived 100 years ago, a simple way of life. Lilo Wopala Tonka.
Wow. Thank you so much. You were an incredible public speaker. Last thing is, on Facebook, we have a comment from an H community member, Tahanish Tarrant, saying, thank you to the panelists. My family in Shinnecock is listening. So it's always nice to hear the relatives, wherever they're at, listening in. So I just wanted to extend that. Anyways, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in, for the people on Facebook Live that are tuned in. Definitely visit all of the links that you see in the comment sections. And thank you so much, Robin and Candy, for joining us. And thank you for everybody who was able to tune in. Have a good evening, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
On Happy Wash Day. Good night.
Wopila Tonka for having us.